Hey there, it's Gary Parrish. Welcome back to the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting, dodo birds, and leaky black. Matt Norlander is here with me. If you're watching on YouTube, smash the like button like you're Brandon Davies. You have consent, and don't forget while you're here to also subscribe to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube channel. Let's get into it. Hope everybody had a nice holiday. We're taking a little breather ourselves. We're going to get back to normal episodes on Friday, but today we decided to just drop a mailbag episode for you guys to consume at your convenience. So the way that works is at some point, Norlander will just email me a bunch of emails you guys have sent, and we'll sort through the questions, and then I'll get one and he'll get one. Is that roughly more or less how it works?
It is, and I want to, right off the top, thank everyone that sends in questions. We cannot remotely get to all of them because people.
Well, it sure looks like you tried.
No. GP,
well, it looks like you tried.
GP, I narrowed this. You don't understand. I save you all of the back end work. Okay, I look through every single. Trust me, I read every single.
I know, but just like this dude wants to do a 21-minute read about anything, literally anything.
The longer you talk,
now we got
the show's gonna go.
Now we got an hour 45-minute mailbag episode because he got 47,000 questions.
Okay, this is always dangerous to say off the top, but one, I promise you, this is not going to be an hour 45.
We'll see.
My goal is to be swift on this. Also, people genuinely like the episode, and our bosses also appreciate when we do this, so I'm not going to say no to that. I do appreciate everyone. Like, the stuff that I'm sparing you from is, people are pointing out that dodo birds were as an answer in a recent New York Times crossword puzzle. Our names are on street signs across the country. They send in pictures. People have license plates with Guster on them. They email that to the show. Random correspondence about where to go and what to see games and all sorts of stuff. So we appreciate all that. I do want to give a special shout out to Kathy K, who is based in Germany and huge Purdue fan. She sent a couple of updates as of late, so I at least want to recognize her. We even had a guy from Philly who recently he was at the UCLA versus Nova game, and he's a Nova fan. There was a bunch of UCLA fans behind him, and he kept turning around and saying that Mick Cronin was the best coach in UCLA history. And then he said, quote, "A dude lost it and said I was the dumbest basketball fan he had ever met." So I very much appreciate the correspondence. Know that your emails are getting read, and it would be an entirely other show if I was simply reading random thoughts and from everyone. So there's another, there was a group of dudes, like guys being dudes rock, going to a UMass Lowell Merrimack game, and they recorded a video. I appreciate.
Well, I would like to see some of that stuff.
I'll forward that to you. I think they're all Merrimack fans. They sent that in. I'll forward that to you offline as well. So I appreciate the correspondence. Again, if you want to continue, I don't know when our next mailbag will be because we have a nice little window here.
Nobody loves to tell you when he doesn't know something.
Correct.
More than
I don't know when the next mailbag will be. And Parrish, by the way, Parrish loves to tell you what something's going to happen, and then we know how that. How does that sometimes go? How does that sometimes go?
I was wrong.
That's right. Okay. So, continue to send if you want. Shouts to cbs@gmail.com. That is the word 2, not the number 2. Shouts to cbs@gmail.com. We also get a steady stream of appreciative emails, so I'm at least going to highlight 2 of them. First one is from Jack. He sent this a while back, but he said, "I've been a fan of yours for years, and it's long past time for me to write in and tell you all about how this podcast has been a small part of a very large change in my life over the last 6 years. I started listening in the fall of 2017 as a freshman journalism student at Northwestern. I had always enjoyed men's college basketball, but I started listening more and went deeper into the team and conference as I covered it as a student. It became very apparent that while your knowledge of the game is off the charts," I think he's talking about me there. "The reason I would come back was to hear the off-the-wall jokes and observations from GP and Norlander. Today, 6 years later, I am a sports reporter with the local news station in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. So I have boots on the ground covering the Hawkeyes, Cyclones, and Panthers. I absolutely love my job, and I want to cover college sports for the rest of my life. I remember vividly driving back from a high school basketball game that I was covering, listening to the podcast, and hearing you two riff about Fran McCaffrey and Kermit Roosevelt II and III. I was alone in a car a few miles outside of Dubuque, Iowa, legitimately losing my mind laughing. That's when I knew I had to email the show, thanking the 3 of you for your constant uplift throughout the good times and bad times in my life. Thank you. Best and always one of us, Jack."
Well, isn't that sweet?
It is very sweet, Jack. We very much appreciate you. I'm going to highlight one more heartfelt one, and then I got to get to a fellow who just loves contacting the show, and then we'll get into the questions, I promise. This one is a little bit of an older one, but I've kept it around for a minute. His name is Christian. He writes, I just want to let you know that I truly appreciate your podcast. As a college basketball fan and specifically a Zag lifer, I like to get a better sense of the topography of the game and its totality, and not just from the point of view of my team. I'm quite sure I'm not the only one who feels this way, but your banter coupled with high-level acumen for the sport we love is a great combination that amplifies your knowledge and joy. You remind me of my brother and I. I'm once again quite sure others would feel this way too, and the dialogue that we would exchange on a regular basis. I am clearly Parrish, and my brother is clearly Norlander. It's not lost on me that you guys sometimes switch quote-unquote roles, which heightens the comic effect for me and others. From the refrain of the trivia time, which is Matt's refrain that GP borrows, to the lilting, hi, YouTube, and peacock sound effects, the chemistry that is generated from an organic, natural, and heartfelt place. I believe it's important to be specific on criticism and praise. I'm sure you deal with the surplus of both with half-cock fans, lovers, more of us than them, and haters. Thank you for your ability to speak not only about the sport we love, but to do it with heartfelt humor and at times eloquence. I just wanted you to know I acknowledge it and appreciate what you're doing. He had even more, but I wanted to cut it for brevity. We received a few emails like that, so I at least want to acknowledge the people that take the time to send those long emails in. And a few people had actually noted Parrish. And I pride the podcast on this. Like, we're not going to sit here hitting ourselves on the back the whole show. And this is, I know you will. This is something that I'm glad is a feature of the podcast, but it's certainly not something that I intentionally seek out to do. It's just part of the flow of it. I do enjoy how on any given episode we can go from a very serious topic to you veering dangerously outside the boundaries of what is and is not appropriate to talk about on a public forum. And for that, I think a lot of people continue to come back. So I appreciate the number.
Oh, if you like that on the Eye on College Basketball podcast, you could check it. You should check it out on the Gary Parrish Show, because it's even more all over the place. No, that's why you can't pay attention when people get frustrated. Like you see in the comments sometimes, and like, I thought this was a college basketball podcast, or you just picked that game but didn't offer any analysis. Instead, you just talked about how Indiana is the fourth best team in the state of Indiana. There are a lot of people out there talking about college basketball from the second they start to the second they end. You can find them. Ain't none of them doing Bad Bunny numbers.
Okay. I'm unaware of what the Bad Bunny number is, but I'm gonna take your.
Somebody told me if you think you're doing well, just say you're doing Bad Bunny numbers.
Okay, there we go. I hope we are doing Bad Bunny numbers, but I can't.
This is the point, I learned this a long time ago on radio. For every person who gets frustrated when you're not talking about sports or not talking about basketball, you gain 5 who are there because they'd rather hear about that stuff than the actual college basketball.
Without a doubt. And listen, that's what we're trying to do on the show. Like, give you some like real analysis.
Modern day Bad Bunny.
And then, we're also, I never try and lose sight of the fact that we're a national pod. I want to give some love and attention to some schools outside the mainstream, but we also there's a lot of people that want to tune into the show and be like, okay, what do I need to know over the past 48, 72 or this past week in basketball from the 4 or 5 biggest topics. So we try and appease all audiences, and we appreciate our listenership. It has never been better than it has been in the year 2023. And with that said,
Bad Bunny. I'm like the Mississippi Bad Bunny.
One more correspondence, because a man named Michael, who's a septuagenarian, he has been emailing the show. And you know what? Keep doing it, Michael. I can't promise you that I'm going to highlight you in another mailbag to come. I genuinely appreciate your devotion to the show. This is only 2 of 5 or 6 I could have picked out. And these 2 emails are probably a month apart. He emails. This isn't the first time in an email he brought this up. Postmarital sex. I keep waiting for you to give a shout out to postmarital sex.
I enjoy it.
Especially for septuagenarians. I have nothing against premarital sex. And in fact, I can even remember when I was one of us. But you're disrespecting your elders by neglecting a different, quote unquote, us. Please do not make me sick, Gary Williams, my fellow terp septuagenarian, on you. He's undoubtedly a connoisseur of postmarital sex, and he doesn't take kindly to being disrespected. On another note, you made disparaging remarks about septuagenarians, which I find greatly offensive. I'm 73 years old, and I challenge you to find someone who does my job any better than I do. Parrish might be thinking, what is this guy talking about? I'll tell you.
Yeah.
I will be rooting for Leonard Hamilton to win the ACC and make you guys eat crow. Not only that, but you still refuse to acknowledge the wonders of postmarital sex. I will never cast aspersions on premarital sex. In fact, my memory is good enough that I have very fond memories of those times. I am not making this email up. This comes from an actual human being that loves to listen to the show. Michael, I'm going to save you public from knowing your last name. And then I got one more quick for you here. He also emailed in, this is, I don't know, 2 weeks later. During your Big Ten preview, you seemed unable to stop talking about the 63 teams that have made the KenPom end-of-season top 25 over the last 7 years. Yeah. You even went so far as to breathlessly read the names in alphabetical order of all the teams who have made the coveted list. See, right. we pissed them off, Parrish.
Oh, no.
Yet somehow.
I missed Maryland. Somebody else pointed that out to me.
As you breathlessly trumpeted the results of your meticulous research, I did not hear the name of my Maryland Terrapins.
Right.
I worried that I'm perhaps getting a little senile, so I decided to check.
Well.
Please correct me if I'm wrong, but until I hear evidence that the Terps do not belong on the list, I will seethe in anger and await your apology. It is bad enough that you disrespect your loyal septuagenarian audience by refusing to acknowledge the sublime nature of postmarital sex, but now you kick Terp Nation to the curb. Please don't continue to let me down. Unbelievable stuff.
Okay. What's my fellow's name again? Mike?
Mike or Michael? I think it's Michael. Yeah.
Yeah, Michael. Okay, here's what I would say. First off, it was an innocent error. I had Maryland in my list. I was just reading. I just missed Maryland. It was a simple it was a reading mistake, nothing more. I apologize for reading incorrectly. All right. As for postmarital sex, I'm for it. I think that goes without saying. Nobody is arguing. The reason we took up the cause of premarital sex as opposed to, youth illiteracy.
Yeah.
Or childhood cancer or any of those types of things. The reason we went with premarital sex as our cause is because people do push back against premarital sex. Nobody pushes back against postmarital sex.
That's true. That's true.
So there's no battle to fight. Everybody's cool with postmarital sex. The only fight we have is about premarital sex. But I assumed it went without saying. I'm a big fan of postmarital sex.
I want as few angry, horny septuagenarian listeners as possible.
Yeah.
And by hopefully atoning for the Maryland oversight, Michael, we've done well by you. And he's now, by the way, we're hitting it with the 60 and 70 and potentially 80-year-olds. We've received quite a few. I don't know, quite a few is enough. At least 3 or 4 emails in the past year from the folks that have hit.
Hey, we've got teenagers and even preteens,
which I feel that I should remind you about that, given what, we sometimes talk.
And then we got 73-year-old Michael and all things in between. I like it like that. I like to be able to appeal to all audiences like that.
We appreciate everyone for checking in with us.
I don't appreciate everyone.
Can you just, as we wind down this,
I appreciate most, but not all of them. Not all of them.
Fair enough. See, how does it work that on the show you sometimes can be a little more the wild card, but you're also the bad cop? I gotta be the good cop on this.
I just tell the truth. Every time something comes up, I try my best to tell the truth. I do not appreciate everybody who listens, and especially not everybody who's in the chat. Okay. I appreciate some of those people.
I got great news for you. This is, I hate to break the seal of authenticity here. This is a pre-type. We have since celebrated Christmas, and you don't have to worry about a live chat for this episode.
Thank God.
You're up first. What question we got?
Emil. I got an email from Emil. Have you ever got an email from Emil?
I got the email and I forwarded you the question. Yes.
So technically I got an email from Matt, but it came from Emil. How many teams could beat the Detroit Pistons right now?
Okay. There was a longer question here, but I simplified this. Well, let's start with the obvious. We don't think any team's beating the Detroit Pistons. And as we record this show.
And by the way, he means college basketball teams.
Correct. He's not asking about the New York Giants. You know what? The Los Angeles Dodgers, I'm pretty certain, could beat the Detroit Pistons right now.
There's no the Dodgers are about to go 130-32. I mean, it is outrageous.
It really is. On a fundamental level, I'll tell you, and let's try to stay on track here.
Nope.
I don't know if I'm more interested or less interested in baseball because of what the Dodgers are doing. I haven't decided. I don't know. I'm a casual baseball fan. Will follow my Cubs here and there, but I don't get dialed in until at least the summer. the Dodgers doing what they're doing, I don't know if it makes me more or less likely to.
Here's the thing. You just go, if you're an NL West team, you just go, we're playing for a wild card.
Yeah.
And if you're NL Central, NL East, you say, hey, we're not better than them, but we might be in a short series against them. You never, Shohei's hurt, or you just never know. You just got to get this. A lot like the NBA playoffs. You know who wins the NBA title every year, or at least goes far in the playoffs every year? The healthier teams. The healthier teams. Like the teams that are healthy when the playoffs start. You tell me who's available, who's not when the NBA playoffs start. I'll tell you who's going to do well and who's not. And so the key with the NBA is like, okay, if everybody's healthy, we might not be as good as this team or that team. Okay, but everybody's not going to be healthy. So that's the thing. If you're trying to look for a way to keep hope, if you're a National League team or just a baseball team other than the Dodgers, you don't have to be better than them over 162 games because you're not going to be. You just have to beat them in a short series or maybe even a 7-game series. And the nature of baseball makes that more realistic than the roster mismatch might suggest.
All right. So the question here is which team could beat the Pistons? None. No college team could beat the Pistons. But the question here's what we want to say. Who is and I don't know Paris' answer. Paris doesn't know mine. Which college team do we think could lose by the fewest amount of points in a 40-minute game against the Detroit Pistons? As we record this, the Pistons have lost 25 straight. You're going to listen to a few days after we've done the mailbag episode. So that losing streak could either be overextended. It's probably going to get extended and be an all-time record there. I will give you mine first. I considered 3 teams. I considered Kentucky, Connecticut, and my pick is Arizona. And right now, with Arizona's roster construction, Tommy Lloyd coaching, he employs an NBA-esque kind of scheme. I think if the Pistons and Arizona played a 40-minute basketball game, and look, we're going to say this is college rules, college three-point line, all that. I'm giving all the rules, the benefit of the college team. I would say a Pistons-Arizona game would be 108-70. Detroit wins.
Okay.
I got that, just so we're clear, that's a 38-point margin for the Detroit Pistons.
Just to make sure everybody understands what we're talking about here and why this is always, I'm not trying to pick on anybody. I think Emil knew the answer would be 0. But this is never a serious question. I don't care how good the college basketball team is or how bad the NBA team is. There is no scenario where the college team is better than the NBA team.
Ever.
Period.
It's not.
Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
Marcus Sasser was a first-team All-American last season. He is now the 10th leading scorer for the Pistons. That's what we're talking about.
Correct. Yes.
The Pistons could trot out a starting lineup, and this wouldn't even be their best one. This is just one with recent college players you'll recognize. This wouldn't even be their best lineup. It's just one that you'll recognize. Cade Cunningham, Marcus Sasser, Jaden Ivey, Marvin Bagley, and Jalen Duren. That team would go undefeated in college basketball.
Likely, yes, likely. That being said, Zona's got some dudes. It's got a really
and we could bring Isaiah Stewart, James Wiseman, Kevin Knox, Alec Burks, and Bojan Bogdanovic off the bench.
It's not swaying me as much, but still, it's not going to be close. Are you larger than 40 points in a 40-minute game? Do you have a score guess or no?
If you told the NBA players you go win this by 40 and I'll give you $1 million each, they would win it by 40.
Okay, there we go.
You just never know when somebody's going to get bored up 28 or up 34. But if you told them, I got $1 million for every one of you, go win it by 40, they could win it by 40. They could win it by however what. So to answer your question, okay, who could maybe play them closer than 40?
Just the close. Who's giving them the tightest game? Yeah.
Of the teams you named, the only one we're matched up on is Kentucky, and that's just a talent thing, right? Like Kentucky's just got NBA talent. And they do have a couple of older guys in Trey Mitchell and Antonio Reeves. I don't think Kentucky would play them close.
Yeah. I picked Arizona because it's got a bunch of older dudes. And in addition to the way they play, that's why Arizona was my pick.
Okay. I thought about just going with something that would be so different than what they're used to dealing with that maybe it could work, like a Zach Edey. But I just think Purdue's guards would get eat up.
I could not put Purdue on the list because it's a really good college team. But when I looked at it, honestly, Parrish, and I looked at about like 8 to 10 different teams, Purdue was like one of the last teams that I even considered being in the conversation because Edey's destroyed in pick and roll, and the guards would be completely overwhelmed at this stage of their life.
Right. I mean, they just it'd be bigger guards, more athletic guards. They just, I mean, like I turned Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey loose on the Purdue backcourt.
I mean, Fletcher Loyer is going to have to go down the court and just hoist from 36 feet and hope there's a hand not in his face.
Right. So I eliminated Purdue there, I think. You mentioned old. Like, if you're looking for old, Memphis is old.
I considered.
Yeah. Like, Memphis at least got a bunch of guys that are – I mean, Memphis's best starting lineup might be older than Detroit's lineup.
It might be. I didn't look, but it's older than – I know Memphis is older than at least one or two different lineups in the NBA. I've seen that put out there this year.
Yeah, so it would – Memphis would be one. Kentucky, I think, because of just the talent. Memphis, just because they're older guys. And it is like – they got 2 former McDonald's All-Americans, so they got some talent there as well. Naquan Tomlin is now eligible. He's an older guy. To be clear, I don't think any of these teams will mess around with the Detroit Pistons, but Memphis is somebody I would, at least physically, they could maybe hold their own because they're not hold their own. They could compete because they're older and they wouldn't get overwhelmed physically. But the list is short, and by short we mean just list of teams that could try to stay within 25.
Yeah, exactly. As a reminder, we bring up Kentucky. It lost to UNC Wilmington.
Right.
So, I mean, but I do appreciate the question. We put a little twist on it because I've never heard anyone take that question. Just ask, okay, who's going to lose by the fewest amount? Next question. Tim from Indianapolis emails, and he responded to a topic we had in the preseason. I appreciate this perspective. He said it was quite the dichotomy to hear Norlander and GP talk about how little value high school recruits have. The question is not as simple as would you rather have the 75th best player from high school versus the 75th best transfer, which is what we talked about some weeks back. He says it's more like, would you rather have 1 year of the 75th best transfer, or would you rather have 3 years of the 75th best high school player after you get to develop them year after year? The bench is still long enough for some internal development. Explain yourselves. I think this is a good distinction here. Now, I'll also say you aren't necessarily getting 1 year of a player in the transfer portal. So the way that you framed it, Tim, also is a little bit skewed, but it is a good distinction. I would say if it was simply A to A, do I want 1 year of a top 75 transfer or 3 years of a top 75 high school player? And that, broadly speaking, I would take 3 years of the kid ranked 75th and trust that he will develop into something a bit more reliable. It might bring more stability of your program. Again, you're promising me that I'm getting 3 years. I'm not getting him for year two, and then he's transferring out. If it was simply 1 year for 1 year, or 1 year against 3 years, I think my line there is you told me I get the 40th best transfer for 1 year or 3 years. I would probably go transfer at that point, somewhere along those lines. But it's also not exactly that simple. I appreciated the question. It made me think about it. I was wondering what your thoughts might be, GP.
My thoughts were that the premise is completely flawed.
Okay.
Like you're setting up a flawed premise. Like that's not real. Why do you have to pick between 1 year of a transfer and 3 years of a high school player? You ready for this? Jaden Bradley was a high school player, went to Alabama for 1 year. They only had him for 1 year. Now he's at Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, Alabama's got Mark Sears. He's a transfer. He's in his second year. So Alabama, in the exact same year, took high school players and a transfer. Brandon Miller, Jaden Bradley are both gone after being high school players 1 year. Mark Sears is still there. He's there longer than the high school players. Umar Ballo is a transfer. He's in his third season at Arizona. What are you talking about? You're allowed to keep transfers more than 1 year.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And you're not guaranteed to keep high school players more than one. And the internal development, what are we talking about? That's not even a real thing anymore in college basketball. Like that's the idea that you could take,
like you've got like Fletcher Loyer as a player who would apply to that kind of situation. Like he's probably not going to transfer from Purdue. Wasn't a top 70 recruit, or actually Fletcher might have been. But you get what I'm saying. Like there are guys that are still in that 50 to 100 range that are going to stay like 3 years or so and develop and get to be better players.
Yeah, but how about this? Go anybody you want. Do a research project. Find me in the past couple of years players who are ranked outside of the top 50 of their high school class who do not play as a freshman or sophomore. They're just barely players. Then find out how many of those players actually stay 3 years at the same school. You don't. If they don't play, they transfer. I have had actual high major coaches tell me they will no longer take a high school player they do not think can at least be a rotation player for them as a freshman. Because if you have them on your bench, all you're doing is developing them, and then they're going to the transfer portal, and all you did was work with them to get them better for somebody else. So I just think the whole premise is flawed. And I will double down on what I said previously. Broadly speaking, I would be building my college basketball team through the transfer portal, not through high school. It's different if you're Kentucky. It's different if you're Duke. If you can get the 5-star one and done projected lottery picks, yeah, I would take 3 or 4 of them a year if I could. But outside of that, absolutely. You tell me I can take the 50th best high school player or the 50th best transfer. Give me the 50th best transfer. And I don't even need stipulations on it. I don't need to know how many years anybody else is going to stay. I'm just the 50th ranked transfer is more valuable than the 50th ranked high school player. And if you're making decisions based on, well, the 50th ranked high school player might not play for me in year 1, but I can develop him, and then you're just betting on things that are not guaranteed. You are more likely to lose that guy than you are to actually develop him into a nice 2 or 3 year player.
Yeah, and there are obviously exceptions to this, which makes the sport fun. Like Purdue. It's not going by that model. Marquette, not going by that model. UConn did bring in Cam Spencer.
You watch and see. They will.
They will, but Shaka's now not done it 2 years in a row.
Well, wait till this team gets blown up. Watch what he does.
I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm saying to this point, Marquette was not abiding by that. And even Duke. Now, Duke is one that is different, as GP mentioned. But for the most part, this is the way that it's going.
I'll tell you the one to keep an eye on.
Okay.
Missouri. Missouri has like a top 5 recruiting class of 2024 right now.
Yeah.
I think all of them are ranked outside of the top 40 or 50. I respect Dennis Gates. He's obviously knows more about building rosters than I do, and he's been very good at it. But I'd be real hesitant about bringing that many sub 50 freshmen into the SEC at the same time.
Yeah, that's a good note there. By the way, Fletcher Lawyer 122 in the prospect rankings. All right, next question.
Jordan ask, who do we think is the nicest fan base?
Yeah.
We often hear about fan bases that are mean or whatever, but wondering the other side.
I got 5. I went through every power conference, and I created a list of what I thought was the 5. How many? I wonder if you left it to 1, but I'm curious what you have here. And this is a curveball question. I like this one.
I don't have any.
Come on, man. Stop.
I think fan bases are either mean or they're just non-existent. Do I have to remind you? We had Beaver Fever talking shit to us a few years ago.
Beaver Fever was on our ass.
An Oregon State basketball fan was on our ass a couple of years ago, all right? So here's the thing. I don't care what the fan base is. This is true with every fan base. Everyone. They either like you or don't say nothing. They like you or they stay quiet. But eventually, if they ever feel like you have slighted them in any way, and by slighted them, I mean rank them 16th instead of 15th.
You know what?
Then they turn mean. Every one. It doesn't matter which one. And then when you prove to be right about them, they just disappear. They never come back and say, GP, remember when I told you were crazy, having us all the way down at 16? It turns out we've lost 3 of our last 4. I get it now. They never come back and say that. They just disappear again. And then they come back. That's the root of the Indiana's internet is out, because I went months without hearing from them. Because when things go bad, nobody says, GP, you were right, or Norlander, you were right. They just disappear.
I had Arkansas preseason 47. I still could prove to be wrong.
Perfect.
I haven't heard from an Arkansas fan in a minute right now. Yes.
How many times a week in the preseason were Arkansas fans calling you stupid relative to how many times over the past 2 weeks you've even heard a thing from an Arkansas fan?
It's not even comparable.
Right.
But at the same time, at a certain point, I've told you this. Just get out of your mentions. Just get out of there. Don't concern yourself with it. I thought, because of the fact that I don't know if people know this, Parrish ranks 26 teams every single morning. Okay. I don't know if they know this or not. And I thought maybe he would say, I don't know what that means. He's putting up some fingers again. I thought he would
I was
say,
trying to do 26, and I realized I didn't know how to do it exactly. So then I just started flashing signs like a catcher
yeah, exactly.
or a gang member, one of the two.
Okay,
Maybe a gang member catcher.
I thought maybe he would say, you know what? I like the question because there's definitely, this many that are not going to make the list. But over the years, I've noticed that maybe this fan base is a bit more appreciative.
Even the ones that are nice, if they ever perceive any slight, they turn on you and get mean. I hate them all. I hate them all.
Let's acknowledge the fact that this is, a minority vocal. The people that live online, this is not in general representative of the larger fan base. That being said.
Oh, no. To that point, real quick, then I'll get it.
Yeah.
It is always important to remember, because I never forget this. We often say things like, Kentucky fans are crazy, or, Kansas fans are nutty, or Memphis fans are bananas. The truth is, it is always a small, vocal minority that lives online. If I walked into Allen Fieldhouse, even though I've been covering the sport for 20 years and am on television and podcast and Twitter and everything else, it is never lost on me that if I walked into Allen Fieldhouse, most people in there would not even know who I am. All right. So when you start saying things like Kansas fans hate me, most Kansas fans don't even know you. All right. It's just the maniacs that are on Twitter, and they are just irrationally aggressive. So when I say I hate them all, I mean only them. Only the very loud, goofy, nonsensical fans who live online and are just constantly being outrageous. The average fan at every school is perfectly cool. It's just those ain't the ones that are in the mentions too often.
I would say, so with that being said, I want to now answer the question, then we can move on. To me, the 5 fan bases that I think your average fan is among the nicest, their disposition is the sunniest. And this is based on my experiences in writing and covering the sport for, 15 years now or so. Kansas State, Butler, Kansas State. While I'm sure KU fans would disagree, I don't feel the inferiority complex vibes the way some other universities fan bases might have with other rivals. K-State makes my list. Butler for sure makes my list. I find, and this isn't just a podcast thing, I find Baylor's fan base to be pretty rosy overall on the hoop side. Colorado, now then again, just for some frame of reference, I consider Colorado because it's got a decent enough presence, but Stanford doesn't even register. There's some of these schools that they weren't even under consideration. But I think Colorado just barely clears the bar. And then I'll tell you what, there's been one fan base that I've been poking fun more than GP really, and yet they continue to be supportive despite not having a team with much to root about, and that's Nebraska. So that's my 5: K-State, Butler, Baylor, Colorado, Nebraska. To me, you have the nicest fan bases in college.
I'll say this: I got no issues with any of those fan bases.
There you go. See, told you.
I like most of them people.
There you go.
All right, now what are we doing?
You can either do a question or toss to our partners. It's up to you.
Let's toss to partners.
Can we get a word?
We need the sports news anywhere.
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
It's much easier, Deadleg, to talk about the nice fan bases when you ain't had basically every fan base in America at one point say you look like a human penis.
Okay. With that being said, it is my question. Will from Parts Unknown wants to know, can we get a quick recap on how many teams GP has said will be in the field this year? Conference previews and the preview shows, he's got to be at 50 at largest by now. He is right, by the way, and I'm not besmirching you for this, Parrish, but in the preseason, you had 115 teams in the tournament. So
we got to expand the field.
So with that being said,
I
actually took out one of the teams I told you about because they lost last night. So I got 10 teams here.
Okay.
You and I are both going to say quick and rapid fire.
Rapid fire.
And
this is what I'm so good at. If the one thing everybody says about me is I'm real good at rapid fire.
Let's not spread that word too much. Hashtag more of us. Okay. Yes, no. Will this team be in the NCAA tournament? You answer, then I answer. First, 9-2 Northwestern.
Yes.
No. 7-3 Washington.
No.
Yes. 8-3 Indiana.
Come on, man.
Rapid fire.
I mean, the Indiana's just got like a bylaws problem. Did you know? I don't know if you've ever read like the actual process the selection committee is supposed to go by.
Fire. I should have put the Hoosiers last. What was I doing?
It's just a lot of people don't know this. And so in the spirit of this is just something Indiana fans are going to need to, if they don't know it, they need to know it. And I'd rather them hear it from me than somebody else. The committee is not allowed to take more than 3 schools from the state of Indiana. You can't do that. It's a bracketing principle.
Yeah.
So you go ahead and take Purdue, right? And then Indiana State, obviously, that's the second best team in the state of Indiana. And then Butler's back. So
we're getting to Butler, by the way.
So that just doesn't leave a spot for Indiana, sitting at 83rd at KenPom right now. I'm going to go no on the Hoosiers. It breaks my heart, and it's hard to say about a blue blood program. You just assume blue blood programs are going to be in the NCAA tournament every year, but I'm afraid we're going to find out that's just not true.
I will also say no. 8-4 Arkansas in the tournament, yes or no?
Yes, and must we trust?
I'm saying no. 10-1.
Of course not. You've been a hater since the beginning.
10-1 South Carolina. 10-1 South Carolina.
No. Best wins Virginia Tech. They ain't done nothing.
I'm going to say no, but the record is nice so far. 9-3 Syracuse feels like a tricky one.
No. 0 top 40 wins. They ain't done nothing.
Some of these teams are going to do some stuff in league play, but I'm picking teams that are, exactly. They don't easily forecast as tournament teams. You've got Q's no. I'll say no. 11-1 Utah State.
No.
I will say yes. I think that the Aggies, although they're dealing with a recent injury, I think the Aggies get it done. The Mountain West right now is really, you're going to be wrong about that in the preseason, by the way. I think I said over under 2.5 Mountain West teams. You went under. I think you had 3 or fewer, and I said more, and it's going to be more. They're definitely getting a minimum of 3. They've done too much damage in the non-con here.
All right, well, you're going to be wrong about something too.
I know. Listen. That one's on me. I was wrong. Always willing to hit the button. In fact, I'll do it one more time. That one's on me.
Okay.
I was wrong.
Just so you know. I mean, it doesn't look like you're going to be wrong about Arkansas, but you're going to be wrong about something.
I know it's not just one thing. It's many things. A couple more teams. 10-2 Butler. 10-2 Butler. Where are you at?
Yeah, Ian. Shelvin Mack. My friend is Shelvin Mack, and he said Butler is back. I'm trusting him.
Okay. I figure you might want to use your own analysis here.
No. Use my analysis over a Butler legend? What are you talking about?
I will say I am not happy about this. I just complimented the Butler fan base. Now you're getting put to the test, Bulldogs fans. I'm going to say no. And my prediction as of late December here, I will say Butler is the first team out of the tournament.
Somebody tweet him and tell him he looks like a human penis. Okay. Right at Matt Norlander, you look like a human penis. That's what they always do to me when they don't like what I say or do. They tell me I look like a human penis.
Look at me. Come on now.
You look like a human penis with a beard.
Not follically challenged.
You look like a bearded penis.
Okay. 11-1 Indiana State. Yes, we are sticking in the state of Indiana.
Yes, of course. Second best team in the state of Indiana. What are you talking about?
I got it.
Just because you can't trust Indiana's going to get to the tournament, don't mean you can't trust Indiana State's not going to get there. Times have changed, Norlander.
Yeah, it is and is a potential long way to go. But the valley between Indiana State and Drake, maybe Two-Bit Valley, we'll see. But I will say Indiana State gets in. And the last team, we talked about it on the show last Friday. What are you doing with 8-4 Villanova?
I'm putting Villanova in. The Big East going to get.
I'm going to say they're in.
The Big East is going to get at least 5 schools in the tournament, and Villanova is going to be one of the 5.
I'll say Villanova makes it, but boy, oh boy, that's a wobbly one. So there's a reminder for people. Parrish he wants to put 115 teams in October.
Expand the field.
We got that down to at least 90, I hope, as we turn into the year 2024. You're next up.
We got a note from Ryan in Alabama. He says, how is Auburn so high in the metrics on the 3-4 seed line and still not ranked? Well, Ryan, I don't know what rankings you look at, but I should let you know, I rank 26 basketball teams every single morning.
That's why I put it in. I know.
And I've had Auburn 24th in the top 25 and 1 for much of the week. That said, it's easy to understand why Auburn's not in the AP poll. I can walk you through it.
Walk them through it.
Auburn was not ranked in the preseason. Okay, so it starts there. Very first game, they lose to Baylor. So you ain't going in with an 0-1 record, right? So then you got to get wins to prove yourself worthy of the ranking you want. Well, then they lost at Appalachian State. All right. They still, as of this moment, have 0 wins over top 40 KenPom teams. So the computer numbers are super strong, but they're also way stronger than the resume. Now, if you want to look at it like this, super strong computer numbers, and if Bruce Pearl wouldn't have just scheduled the game at Appalachian State, here's something you might not know.
Mm-hmm.
You can't lose a game if you don't schedule it.
Can't win it either.
But for our purposes,
you know what I just did? I turned it around on you.
I know, but for our purposes,
around on you.
Yeah, but here's the thing. The reason most people won't schedule a game like this, most high major coaches, is because if you lose it, it is the type of thing that'll keep you out of the top 25. And if you win it, it's not really the type of thing that'll push you into the top 25 because it doesn't resonate with voters the way it's the type of game almost no high major coach would schedule. So if you go, hey, I'm not going to hold Bruce Pearl accountable for losing a game most people wouldn't even schedule, you can sort of trick yourself into it there. I've got Auburn in because I do look at the computer numbers, and the Appalachian State game was a game most people wouldn't even have played. But if you're this is not one where I think the AP voters are crazy for not having Auburn in. I have them in, but I just explained to you why it's easy to leave them out.
Yeah, it's the cadence of the schedule. And the loss to App State basically restarted the timer. I think Auburn would be top 5 at KenPom had it won the game at App State because its metrics are really strong. It is an interesting dichotomy.
And would be easily in the top 25 if they had if they'd won at Appalachian State, not because they'd have that win, because then they would only have the loss to Baylor, and then they would have the super strong computer numbers, and people would probably just slide them right behind Baylor.
Next question. Sam from Indiana. This was the subject line. This was one of, I don't know, I want to say a dozen plus emails about you and your relationship with Indiana. So I felt obligated to at least put it in here once. He said, the subject line in the email was, is GP on drugs? And then the entire body of the email was, GP either loves IU or he is on acid. Can you confirm, is Gary on acid? What's interesting about this email from Sam is he thinks you're, I'm just going to read into it. It's almost like you got that 7th grade crush kind of situation going on. Like you got such big feelings for Indiana. You don't want to show yourself. You don't want to wear it on your sleeve. You don't want to show your card. So because of that, you might do a little kick into the shin, little insult here and there, little push in the hallway. Is that what this stems from, man? You got a little crush on Indiana?
I do not have a crush on Indiana.
Well, then are you on acid?
Not on acid. Not right now. Not right now. Not at this moment. And you can take this, but I will say, IU fans, I will speak for myself. I got no issue with your program whatsoever. And just so you guys realize, we are saying this, at least I am, and somewhat for GP. We say it in jest. It's part of it. Yes, it has become a running bit. And for every flustered IU fan, and I'm not going to say this is maybe this is why Paris is doing it. You can speak to yourself, GP. This has become a source of genuine entertainment for non-Indiana fans on a level that I did not anticipate there. And I honestly think that some of this stems from the fact that there's definitely a decent portion of a college basketball fan base. And we'll get to this on a different question later, that just think that Indiana's veritability as a blue blood should no longer be on the table. Like it should not be. It's gone too long without a title. When you look at the way that it's dipped over the past 15 or 20 years, it doesn't hold a right to that. And so when they see GP maybe just poking fun a little bit, they enjoy it all the more. Just because you brought up their history. Just to put some numbers on it.
There you go.
Indiana hasn't finished in the top 25 at KenPom in 7 years, hasn't finished ahead of Purdue in the Big Ten standings in 7 years, hasn't made the Elite Eight in 21 years. I mean, Jerome Tang made the Elite Eight in year 1 at Kansas State, and Indiana has not made the Elite Eight in 21 years. Hadn't won a national title in 36 years. So there are people out there wanting to take their blue blood status away. I'm not one of those people. I think it's hilarious to keep calling them a blue blood. I don't want them to lose their blue blood status. There's nothing funnier to me than being able to consistently say those things about them and say, but hey, it's a blue blood program, so I guess they'll be okay. Do you know what it all stems from?
I know exactly what it stems from.
Because not all Indiana fans.
I know exactly what.
Not all Indiana fans. Not all Indiana fans. Not all Indiana fans. I hope I said that enough. But some of them with Twitter accounts are the most delusional MFers on the planet. I wrote a column one time after they fired Archie Miller before they hired Mike Woodson. So often this gets twisted into I was bashing Mike Woodson. The column was written before Mike Woodson was even hired. And then it constantly gets turned into, you didn't think Mike Woodson was recruit. You can't find a single place I ever said or wrote that Mike Woodson couldn't recruit. I simply never commented on it one way or the other. And yet when it got off to a kind of good start, these fans would just keep bombarding me with this column and quote tweeting the column and quote tweeting the column and quote tweeting the column. So I just sit back and wait. I just sit back and wait for them to become the fourth best team in Indiana. I just sit back and wait for them to become the fourth best team in Indiana. And now I wish somebody would quote tweet that column now. Please do. Send it back to me.
But they can't. And why can't they?
They don't have internet in Indiana. They don't have internet. And you know what's funny? Here's the thing. I'll get tweets from Indiana fans because the Indiana fans just get mad about it. And then the smart ones, they come in and they try to explain to the other ones, well, you know what this is all about, right? And they're like, what? And they say, well, we fired GP's friend, Archie Miller, and he's been out to get us ever since. Can I say one thing?
I didn't even know that was a thing, but okay.
Archie Miller and I are not friends. I mean, I'm friendly with him. I like him. I respect him. I think he's a good college basketball coach. But I bet you I've talked to Archie Miller 5 times my whole life. Like, we're just not, we have never been friends. Again, when I see him, I'm like, hey, Archie, good to see you. And I've texted him before and I've talked to him on the phone to him before. But I bet you in totality, the number of Gary Parrish, Archie Miller conversations is like 5 or under. But there are people in that fan base who've got this whole thing twisted up about I was just trying to cover for my friend. They're bananas.
That's why we put it in the mailbag because
so it is hilarious.
People still ask about this every week.
Oh, okay. So I was at State Farm Arena last weekend for CBS Sports Classic.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many people. I'm just walking around the arena. I can't tell me how many people. There were 2 things that were said more than any other thing to me. More of us,
of course.
Lots of more of us's.
Yes,
and
of course,
and the Indiana stuff. Hey, GP, when's the last time Indiana finished top 25 at Ken Palm? I said, I think it was 2016. I think it was.
There it is. All right, next question. You're up.
No, I got about 40 more minutes on this.
No, keep going. Our next question comes from a guy in Indiana, but it is not about Indiana.
I'm not on acid. Not right now. I don't know what question. You're going to have to ask me.
All right. Ethan in Mooresville, Indiana wants to know if James Madison goes undefeated the rest of the way, do they deserve a 1 seed?
Nope.
You say they don't deserve it.
Won't even sniff it.
How about, okay, so you don't think James Madison deserves it. You don't think that James Madison undefeated would get one by the committee. Those are 2 different things.
I'll answer the same way.
Okay.
They would not deserve it, and they would not get it.
James Madison would almost certainly get a 1 seed if it ran the table. If that was the case, I've got a little data for you here. It would be 32-0 versus D1 teams. The question is, would the committee? I had it here, because I thought you'd say no. The question is, would the committee be willing to do it? I think it would. Here are the mid majors to get a 1 seed since seeding began in 1979. That might be an Indiana fan calling GP right now. Indiana State got it in 79. UNLV was a mid-major program, I say, in 87. Then, like 90, 91, I'm not putting them. They weren't a mid-major then. But UNLV got one in 87. Temple, kind of, sort of. 88 got a 1 seed. UMass got a 1 seed, but I can't say UMass was a mid-major program when it got a 1 seed. Although before Cal got there, it was. But whatever. St. Joe's 04 got a 1 seed. Wichita State in 14 got a 1 seed. And Dayton would have gotten one in 20. So we have had plenty of instances where
every one of those is a team different than James Madison.
I'd say sure, I guess, but they all have independently identifiers about each of them. But like Wichita State isn't that. Wichita State was coming off a Final Four, so maybe that helped them all the more. If you're curious, it's in the Sun Belt now. JMU, best seed for a Sun Belt team since we went to 64 teams. UAB, coached by Murray Bartow. I thought you knew that, maybe not. 6 seed in 86. And then 02, Western Kentucky was a 9 seed. I do believe an undefeated, and this is not going to happen, but if James Madison ran the table and was undefeated, I do think it would get the last 1 seed.
I'll bet you $5,000 right now they wouldn't.
I don't have Gary Parrish money, so I can't bet you that. How about
I'll give you $5,000.
So I have nothing at risk, but if James Madison runs the table and gets a 1 seed, you're just going to give me $5,000?
How about this? How about we get some of the same Indiana fans that paid $10 million to get rid of Archie Miller, my friend?
Okay.
We'll get them to give you like $4 million, and then you can bet it against me, and I will say that undefeated James Madison will not get a 1 seed.
Okay.
They would only have, based on the current schedule and the current numbers,
Yes,
4 wins inside the first 2 quadrants. Best win would be over Michigan State.
they'd have at least, I think, it's not the huge GP, but they'd play in the conference tournament.
So they get one more probably.
They get 1, maybe 2, depending on the teams, right? Yes.
Yeah. So, but either way, their best win would probably end up being a win over Michigan State in the season opener. Even the computer numbers right now are not matching up with the actual human ranking.
They are not. No, to be clear on that, I just have a hard time seeing how the committee would. Maybe hard time's not the right GP, but like 32-0, 33-0, hadn't lost a game. I know it's. Trust me, I know it's a mid-major.
They just did it. They do it to football teams all the time.
That's true, but they're 2 different bodies. Hey, listen, I'm always willing to that one's on me. I was wrong, but I think if we got to that point and no other team had fewer than, say, 4 losses, I think that would be actually a really compelling thing for the tournament. Just the idea that you'd have an undefeated team, James Madison, the football team's good, and then, oh, hell, they're on the 1 line? Is this about to be another one beats by 16 or whatever? Can they even get to the Sweet 16? I actually think it would be good for the tournament and a good storyline, but GP, you might well be right.
I think undefeated James, because right now, remove preseason bias at Torvik, they're 32nd. They're 32nd. Like, if you wanted to be an AP voter who just stood strong and said, I'm not ranking that team. You will have computers to back you up on it. You still do right now. I think undefeated James Madison, undefeated on Selection Sunday, 3 seed or a 4 seed, something like that.
4 would kind of shock me, to be honest. I don't know if that could be defensible. But yeah, but I don't think it's
here's the way you defend it. You just go, I don't think they're one of the 12 best teams in the country, and they haven't beaten any of the 12 best teams in the country. And congratulations on beating a bunch of inferior / bad teams, but that is largely what they've done. Yeah.
Caitlin Allen chimes in. Hey guys, as a fellow journalist, I'm curious what your feelings are on the Oxford comma. I notice CBS Sports does not use it, and that drives me insane. I have a thought on that. Bonus question: what coach do you have to edit the most when you report their quotes? I can see it being Dan Hurley. GP and I both came up on newspapers, and AP style is not to use the Oxford comma. I actually appreciate that we don't use the Oxford comma. We occasionally get into some spelling and grammatical stuff on the podcast, but it has been a minute. GP, what are your thoughts on us not using the Oxford comma as a means of house style at CBS?
I like it. I like the Oxford comma. I mean, I would prefer to use it.
You like the Oxford? I'm not anti-Oxford comma, but I have no resistance over us not using it. And every so often, you will have to use it as means of clarity. But yeah,
that's the thing I run into because there are times when even people who say we're not using Oxford commas will also say, but man, we could really use a comma there.
Yeah.
Well, that's an Oxford comma then. So do we use them or not? And if we're going to say we'll use them in certain circumstances in the spirit of clarity, because when I'm writing, sometimes I'm writing and I go, okay, no Oxford comma, and it just reads weird. It reads weird from one part to the next. And I go, that we should use a comma there. And so if we're ever going to get into a situation, so what you're saying is it's not true that we don't use Oxford commas. What's true is sometimes we use them when we feel like they're necessary. Well, then I think we should just use them.
They're used when the syntax requires them, but otherwise, if it would read similar with or without, it's our house style not to use it. I always appreciate grammar notes, so thank you on that. Here's my top 5 coaches that I would. Editing is half right, half not. It's more like the coaches who will give me the most, but then I have to, using their quotes, I might have to wind up chopping the most. Or my top 5 for cursing or otherwise, and not all this is strictly cursing, to be honest. Hurley is in that group. Bruce Pearl, John Calipari, Tom Izzo, and Steve Forbes. I would say those are the 5 coaches at the high major level who, if you're getting an interview, either they are more likely to say, hey, real quick off the record. So then you got to go and you got to, parse that out. Or there's just so much there that you're like, well, damn. Or you might have to go back and ask a question again to maybe get something a little bit tighter. Any coaches for you that come to mind? It's been, you don't necessarily talk with coaches as frequently as you once did because of change in duties, but I got to figure you got a coach or two that applies to this.
Well, I think Huggins goes without saying.
I would think so. Not active anymore, but yes, he would go without saying. Yes.
I mean, Cal's the most obvious one just because he has a lot to say about everything.
He can ramble.
He can ramble. He can just really, like, you need a nice 30-second quote, and he'll give you a really nice 3-minute one, which I don't mind, but you do have to edit him down a little bit. Like off of my column from Kentucky's win over North Carolina, like I wanted to paint a scene from the end of that game using a lot of the way he told the story. And while doing that, you have to cut down on the story. Otherwise, I'm doing a 21-minute read. You know what that's like. I
know all too well what that's like. I will say this. The 3 coaches, in my opinion, who are the best off the record, but public doesn't really get to see that side of them. Like they're smart or they're funny or they got a lot to say, but they don't tend to just show that side of themselves. But off the record, they're different. Your best friend, Archie Miller. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, you've mentioned 2 of them already on the show. Archie Miller, Dennis Gates, and Kevin Willard. There's an enlightening side to all of those guys that they just don't tend to show too much, but off the record, they're
no, Archie is funny. I have this like memory. I don't even know why this is in my head, but I can remember one year being at Peach Jam, and Arch was there when he was still at Dayton, and there was Sean might have been there and at Arizona, and there's like it was like Arizona Duke, it was like Arizona Duke, UCLA. And then like Dayton sitting in the, and I just remember this moment. I don't even know if Archie remember this because it was just a thing. It didn't even mean anything. It made me laugh because somebody said something like, "Oh, it's Duke here and boom, boom, boom," and all the, and it's like, and Archie. I remember Archie like looking at Sean or somebody and saying, "I can get anybody I want. I can get anybody I want." He's just goofing around like he was going to go bang heads with Mike Krzyzewski for a player to try to get him to Dayton. Right. But it was a little. So yes, he's funny. Rick Barnes is funny, but he won't show it that often. But you just get Rick Barnes sitting around telling stories. He can be funny. You know who's a great storyteller? And I know the easiest thing for everybody to do is just like, yeah, but you know what he did in Austin? I got it.
Yeah.
Just in terms of a really great storyteller, Chris Beard is a wonderful storyteller. Like funny. Like everybody has stories, and then the people who are funny can tell stories hilariously. He's a hilarious storyteller. So those guys pop into my head.
All right, you're next up, Russ from the Boneyard. This is the most ridiculous question, but it was so weird that I had to include it.
Let's say the NCAA institutes a rule tomorrow that every men's basketball team's tallest starter must switch positions and roles with its shortest starter. Everything else stays the same. Which current team is best equipped to handle this?
Just a stupid question, but I could not look away. Thank you, Russ from the Boneyard. I have my answer, but I'm going to hold off. Did you? I look at GP. I looked through like 60 rosters.
Okay. I'm taking the question as it was presented.
Correct.
Which current team is best equipped to handle this switch? You switch your tallest player with your shortest player. So everything else stays the same.
Yeah, and the tallest player ideally is your point guard. He's got to bring it up the floor. He's running the offense, and your shortest player's got to probably work the post, but figure all that out. Yes.
Okay. I went with Louisville.
Stop.
I don't think it would matter. They would just still suck differently.
Wow, look at you.
It just wouldn't matter. So they're best equipped to handle it because it wouldn't change anything. Louisville could, starting on January 2nd against Virginia, make their starting 5, their starting 1, and their starting 1, their starting 5, and it wouldn't change anything.
1, you're not wrong, and 2, you just changed the game, man. Wow.
See? Independent thinker.
That's your best answer on the show.
Independent thinker.
That's true. That's some strong independent thinking.
Now you want an actual answer?
I mean, that feels like an actual answer.
Yeah, that's the actual answer. But now do you want me to try to like create a basketball team that could still be good, that is good and could still be good. And by the way, I don't even think this is possible.
I don't need. Let's see if your team matches mine, though.
Kentucky.
Not my team.
Switch Aaron Bradshaw with DJ Wagner and let's go play.
Is Wagner the shortest?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I looked at Kentucky because I was like, I guess Reed Shepherd isn't a starter, so he doesn't apply here. But that's not bad. Or is Wagner shorter than Dillingham?
Dillingham doesn't start.
That's also true. Yeah, they got a weird one. Mine was Duke because Filipowski shoots the three from well. He can handle it. If you asked him to run the point, that's fine.
That's actually that's the right answer.
The shortest one and the shortest player is Jeremy Roach, who I could actually like. He's a decent rebounding guard. And if you had to do it, this is a super creative question, Russ. So we appreciate it. Duke was my top answer. And then Illinois, all its guys that are starting are 6'6" or taller. So Coleman Hawkins asked him to run the point, and then Marcus Damask maybe at center. That's not absolutely terrible. So Duke is my answer with Illinois a close second, but a very, very creative question. I like that stuff. We've only got a couple more, and then we'll get out of it. Hey, we're having a good time, bud. Having a great time. Truitt from Durham inquires, what are your thoughts on making the NCAA tournament selection more akin to European football as you wait for
God, somebody wants to do this every year, don't they?
Well, here's why I included it. I included it, one, because this is like a couple other emails. We probably get an email like this once every 3 or so months from different people. So it's been emailed so many times, I thought, okay, I'll just toss it in the pile here. So here's what Truitt writes. And then I got a thought on this. Conference tournaments and selection committee would be abandoned in favor of regular season results, with X amount of teams from each conference automatically qualifying for March Madness based on the end of regular season standings. Example, top 7 teams from each power conference, top 3 teams from various mid-majors, and only the season winner for the smallest conferences. I think this would simplify the selection process and remove any potential bias or subjectivity over strength of schedule, etc. Plus, it puts more direct significance on the season and in-conference play, removing pressure from low-profile teams having to schedule big and non-conference teams and ensuring auto bids come from smaller conferences. What do you think? Am I completely missing why this is a horrible idea? I appreciate your thoughts as the experts. A lot of people want to do this, and I'm not saying that it wouldn't have a certain level of entertainment and change the game. It would. It's just not realistic that it's ever going to happen. Plus, if you do the math going forward and say the Pac-12 is not going to 6 next year, so we'll have 5 power conferences. Okay, 7 times 5 is 35. All right, so then you got 35 teams that are taken care of in a 68-team field. That leaves 20, and then you've got 26 auto bids left over from that. So you only have 7 bids left for the WCC, Mountain West, A10, and American, which are in theory the multi-bid conferences. How would you break up that math? Plus, you'd have to still seed the teams, and from that, while you could argue just let a computer do it, I think the committee, that is feature, not bug. The fact that we have a committee to do this, some people hate the committee, they want it gone forever, whatever. You are enabling a lot of intrigue, speculation, debate. It is a good thing for the sport that we have the committee. The math just doesn't break cleanly enough to allow for this with our conference structure. And you also have the rare year where, like this year, the Valley, that's a 1 big league, but as we said earlier, like that could be a 2 big league. So you're going to say in perpetuity, no matter what happens, the Missouri Valley, you're only allowed 1 bid. Okay, I guess, but that seems like, if anything, if we ever went to that, which we won't, but if we did, it would trigger even more different kinds of realignment that are basketball sparked, I guess. So I like the question. I appreciate the thoughts on it. You are not alone on this, Truitt. But and on some level, Parrish, like this is how this is directly how professional sports work. You got to finish in this top, no matter how good the Eastern Conference or the West Conference is. Everyone knows the rules. Now you got the play-in. You got to be in the top 10 to even qualify. Doesn't matter your strength of schedule, all of that. But GP, college hoops is a different universe. You are playing with 362 teams, and you've got Duke and you've got Alcorn State. You've got Kansas and you've got Quinnipiac. So there's just no clean way of doing it, and it's why we have a committee and why, frankly, a show like this relies so much on referencing really smart advanced metrics like Pomeroy, Evan Maya, and Torvik.
Yeah, clearly Truitt put a lot of thought into it. I just think there's some major flaws with it. One is that if you just base your NCAA tournament selection process on where people finished in their league, you have completely eliminated the non-league portion of the schedule.
Yes.
None of it matters.
Correct.
You can't do that. You've also completely eliminated the importance of conference tournaments. Those are big money makers, big television properties. You can't do that. All right. Even if you could do either of those things, which you can't, do we really want just to I know different NBA teams play different schedules, and we still just care of if you're the top 6 in the West, you're in. If you're 7, 8, 9, 10, you're in the play-in. If you can win those things, you're in the top 8. Now let's go play. I get it. That's fine for the NBA. I just think unbalanced schedules in conferences make it where if we start cutting off like only 6 from this league and only 4 from this league, and you don't. And here's the other thing. Truett wants to simplify the selection process. It doesn't need to be simplified. It's not complicated. We all agree. We put 68 teams in the tournament every year, and we all agree on 65 or 66 of them.
That's exactly. I was gonna, when you were saying that, I was like, 65 is probably undebatable, and then the final 3 in, and maybe the first 3 out are.
That's it.
Yeah,
it's a pretty simple process. That's how we always land at the same place. You can love Jerry Palm, Joe Lunardi, Mike DeCourcy, somebody you've never heard of who just runs a little website and does a bracket on the afternoon of Selection Sunday. All these brackets are going to look pretty much the same, and then there's going to be about 6 teams, and Palm will say it's these three from this group of 6 that get the last 3 spots, and Lunardi will agree with one of those and have 2 different ones though, and that's all it comes down to. So the selection process doesn't need simplifying. It's pretty. We can argue about seeding, but typically that's all we're arguing about is seeding. They usually get they get the teams right, or at least we're arguing about 1 or 2. Beyond that, I think the selection process adds to the sport. Like Selection Sunday is a thing. Bubble talk is a thing. Projected brackets in the final weeks of the regular season. Those are, to borrow your phrase, those are features, not bugs. So I just think, for a lot of different reasons we've just detailed, this is something that might sound good on a surface level, but it's not practical to the sport, and especially not practical to the business of basketball.
GP's got the next question, but you know what, GP? I'm pretty sure we're contractually obligated to do 2 words from our partners. Can I get a second word from the partner?
Wake up to football highlights and news from around the world with the one and only Morning Footy team.
Rise and shine, football fans. Welcome to Morning Footy.
Start your all-day football craze with Morning Footy, part of the all-new Golazo Network.
All right, Tommy from Spokane.
It's Tommy Lloyd.
It is Tommy Lloyd.
Okay, Tommy,
from Tommy Lloyd.
Listening.
Yeah, appreciate Tommy Lloyd writing to shouts at what?
Shouts to cbs@gmail.com.
Yeah, that was nice of Tommy Lloyd to
job, bud.
Email. If Mark Few wins the national championship at Gonzaga, well, Tommy, if you cared about Mark Few winning the national championship at Gonzaga, maybe you should still be there. If that's a priority for you, maybe you should have stayed till he got it done. Oh no, you couldn't get out of there fast enough.
Well, I mean, he was an assistant for like 2 decades. Let's take it easy.
Oh, you couldn't get out of there fast enough, could you, Tommy? If Mark Few wins a national championship at Gonzaga, would that catapult him into the top 10 rankings of all-time coaches, considering he built the program from nothing in a way that's never been done before? I think so.
I don't think so.
But that's because you've always hated Mark Few.
It goes back 20 years.
Oh, God. Before there was Nico Medved, there was Mark Few.
By the way, Nico called me like a few days ago, and I didn't bring it up. I don't think he's aware whatsoever. I'm just going to not bring it up. I assume it will work its way back to him eventually, and then he will. But this is not being brought up until he actually discovers what's going on. Okay, so this question I think was prompted in part because our previous mailbag we got into our top 10 coaches. So here's my top 10 list, and then I'll say why I don't think so. So Kay Wooden, Roy, Dean Smith, Bob Knight 4, Bill Self. Bob Knight 5, Bill Self 6, Jim Calhoun 7. I've got Pitino 8, Adolph Rupp 9, Jay Wright 10, and that leaves Izzo, Boeheim, Denny Crum, Hank Iba on the outside looking in. Now, like Mark Few's not yet in the Naismith Hall of Fame. He hasn't even been nominated. That will happen. Like he's going to get there one day. But one national title, and with what he's done, and I'll also put this out, like he's the all-time leader. His win percentage, Gonzaga right now. So he has won 83.5% of his games. He's knocking on the door. He's going to win game number 700 here next week. He's the winningest coach in the history. Not winningest, that's most, but he's got the best win percentage of any Division I coach ever.
Okay, so let's do this. Play it out.
Okay.
Mark Few retires with a national championship,
Yeah.
the highest winning percentage of any coach in history,
Yes.
and without having ever missed the NCAA tournament. That's top 10.
It's an incredible resume, but the only problem is that you are knocking out someone who has multiple national
Not
championships.
necessarily. Not if you say Izzo is 10.
No, Jay Wright is 10. I've got Izzo on the outside. I've got Calhoun 7, Patino 8, Rupp 9, Wright 10. So you have to remove Wright or like, listen, Rupp coached when,
So does it strictly come down to this for you? Jay Wright won more national titles, so Jay Wright had a better career than Mark Few.
It might, it's interesting on that because I love this question. I gave it some real thought there because I thought he might have a case, but like Izzo and all the success that he's had, like does he jump over Izzo? Boeheim built Syracuse. I don't want to say it was nothing before he got there, but he'd have the same amount. And Boeheim, if he hadn't had the wins taken away, would be really close to K for all-time wins there. It's interesting. I would put you put Few over all those guys.
If Mark Few wins a national championship and we are judging careers,
yeah,
Jim Boeheim won national championship, everything he did at Syracuse. Tom Izzo won national championship, everything else he did at Michigan State. I think doing it out of the West Coast Conference, building that. I know he took it from Munson. It was in a good place when he took it, but he has taken it to another level and never dropped it off. I think if Mark Few wins a national championship, his career, assuming Boeheim, Boeheim retired with one, assuming Izzo doesn't get another one.
Yes.
I would put Mark Few's career ahead of this.
Okay, but this is like the question, like it's come up recently with Steph Curry, top 10 NBA career. Well, there can only be 10 on a list of 10. So if you're putting Curry in, like personally, I'm putting Curry in, and I got no problem knocking off, say, and listen, amazing players, but I'm putting Curry ahead of Larry Bird and Tim Duncan personally. Guys, the point of the game is to put the ball in the hoop. There's no one who has been regarded as a better shooter in the history of the sport than Steph Curry. He's absolutely a top 10 player. That being said, you got to boot some guys out. So if you're going to put Few in, I know you're not kicking out Self. You can't kick out Calhoun. He did just as good of a building job at UConn was nothing before he got there. So you got to knock off your boy Patino, Rupp, or Wright probably. And if you're going to put Few in, who are you kicking out?
I don't even want to say it.
Rick?
It would not be Rick Pitino. I think Rick Pitino belongs in the top 5.
Yeah.
He's the only coach to win national championships at 2 different
schools. Jay. See, Adolph Rupp was pre-integration, like in the tournament was, like 18, 20 teams. I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve to be top 10 because of that, but all the other coaches here, Wooden was that as well, but Wooden won freaking 10 titles. Like he's obviously in the top 3.
I would consider moving Rupp out. And if not Rupp, and I say that maybe Jay. Maybe
the J one is an intriguing one. Yeah, but that's a wonderful thought
because Jay has more national titles. But do we think? And let me be clear, we're talking about we can all agree 2 of the top 15 of all time. So let's relax. Nobody's being slighted here. But take the national title, set them aside. And by the way, this isn't even a question if Mark Few doesn't win a national title.
Got to win a title. Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
But if you then take the national titles and set them aside, and I know why would you do that? That's like saying take Steph Curry's scoring or whatever and set those aside.
He's hit the most threes ever. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, take his 3-pointers, set them aside. I got you. I know you'll get what I'm trying to say. Who had the better career outside of the national titles?
It's an interesting one. Few's he's building quite the resume without a doubt. Yeah.
Right.
All right, good deal. We got one more. It's on you. We had like 8 or 9 music questions, so toss it in at the very
Dan in Minneapolis asks, how far would you travel to see a band that you love? He says, I've gone to Europe to see Pearl Jam, Canada to see Tool, but it's possible that I would take a trip to Australia centered around a concert I wanted to see. What's the farthest you've ever went to see a show? Not how far away from home, because I saw Kanye West and Jay-Z in Paris.
Yeah, you did. That's right.
But we did not go to Paris to see them. We were in Paris and they were there and we said, we should go.
Okay. Question. Did you book the Paris trip knowing that it would be a bonus, or was it completely coincidental that you happened to be in Paris and then you discovered that they were going to be there?
We booked the Paris trip, realized they were there a week earlier, something like that, and was like, damn, we should have planned around that. And then while literally flying to Paris, I started just looking at Paris hey, let's see we're going to be in Paris for 4 nights. Let's see if there's any shows. And they had just stayed in Europe and booked another night in Paris. They never left Europe, and they were just like, hey, let's just book another night in Paris. So they randomly, I believe this is the way it happened. Since the first time I checked, they weren't supposed to be playing, and then they added an extra Paris show, and we were just there. And also the whole website was in French. I couldn't really read it. So I was just like with my wife, I said, hey, it looks like Watch the Throne is in Paris tonight, but I can't really tell. This is in French. Let's just go to this place. We'll go to the hotel, get dressed, go to this place. And best case scenario, we see Jay and Kanye. Worst case scenario, hey, we're just in Paris. We'll figure something else out to do. And so that's that. So we saw them in Paris, but we didn't go. I don't think that counts. We didn't go to see them in Paris.
All right. So the answer to I am willing. The answer is not going to shock you. It's DMB. But so I have not yet done this. DMB every year around Labor Day plays at the Gorge. It's a 3-night thing, and so it is a destination thing for the fan base. You know, before you got to see DMB at least one time at the Gorge, which is this incredible music venue, Heavens Amphitheater out in Washington State. People camp out, et cetera, et cetera. I have never done that. I very much intend to do that. I just haven't done it. So I'm willing to get on a plane and fly across the country to see DMB. I have not yet done it. The farthest I've ever gone, I mean, like because of where I live, like I've been in Connecticut and Vermont, greater New England, the Northeast, like there's just so many venues, GP, as you well know, that I'm just almost never need to get on a plane. I have never gotten on a plane to see a musical act, which isn't to say that I wouldn't, but I just never have. Like I'd love to see a group that I really love play Red Rocks. I've never gone to Red Rocks. I'd love to see someone at Red Rocks or like the Hollywood Bowl, some of these really big iconic venues out in the West Coast and the Rockies there. The most hardcore one I think I've ever done was when I was in college. I saw DMB in Providence on, I don't know, maybe it was a Tuesday night or something. And then I drove 6 hours from Providence to Syracuse, stayed in Syracuse, and then drove another 4 hours the next day. So I saw him on Providence one night, and I saw him all the way out in Buffalo the next night there. But I don't know if I could ever see myself like getting on a plane to go to England or Spain, just for particularly at that point in my life, or where I am now, like with kids and stuff like that. I couldn't afford it when I was younger, and now my wife certainly won't let me do it when I'm older. But it's a good question. We got like 10 questions about music. This one seemed like it was the most decent one. What about you? What's the farthest you've traveled? Because to answer the question, I think it's my Providence to Buffalo one night. Like that's a pretty hardcore drive.
So like same way we went to see Watch the Throne in Paris, but we were going to Paris and saw Watch the Throne. We saw Lady Gaga in Vegas, but that's because we were going to Vegas and she was there.
I think yours is this year, right? Was it not this year?
Yeah, we went to Minneapolis specifically to see Taylor Swift.
I think that's the answer, is it not?
Yeah, I think that is. My wife and I and 2 friends went to Minneapolis. So we didn't go to Minneapolis and Taylor Swift happened to be there. We went to Minneapolis. Where Dan lives, to specifically see Taylor Swift. I have gone when I was in high school, went to Dallas to see 9 Inch Nails and St. Louis to see 9 Inch Nails.
That's pretty good.
And David Bowie. It was David Bowie and 9 Inch Nails in St. Louis. I have flown. My wife and I flew to Atlanta to see Kendrick Lamar. My wife and I flew to Atlanta to see Jay-Z and Beyonce. I've gone to I went to New Orleans to see Watch the Throne. Went to Atlanta when I was early 20s to see U2. Went to New Orleans to see Pearl Jam when I was in college.
New Orleans from where you live is what are we talking about?
5.5.
5.5. Okay.
Yeah. So those are the ones that come to mind. But I think technically what's the farthest you've ever gone strictly to see a concert would be June of this year. Minneapolis to see Taylor Swift.
There you go. All right, that was a good question. Appreciate it. A lot of people sent a lot of music stuff, but only so much time. And listen, we want to wrap this up, get out of here. We will have a live show Friday, of course. We got some good games coming up this weekend, and this was a pre-tape, so I don't anticipate there's anything else to address with all this. I have a trivia time, but I have to wait for you to start the shouts before I can ask you the trivia time.
Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina.
Trivia time.
Okay, let's go.
Josh writes, and I couldn't give you the heads up on this.
All right.
Josh writes, trivia time for GP.
Right.
What was Devin Downey's stat line for that game? He used to run through it all the time every time he shouted it out. Do you remember? Is it hardwired into your brain, the Devin Downey stat line against Kentucky, or has it?
It's not. I used to have it in my notes. I don't even think I have it in my notes anymore. You remember I used to randomly curve into it.
I know.
And I'd say, like, it reminds me of that night, January 10th, 2010, whatever, however I would do it.
I'm gonna look it up.
I want to say it was 26 points.
Okay, I'm looking it up right now. Keep going. You go ahead and vamp. I'm gonna look it up right now.
I want to say 26 points, 6 assists, 4 rebounds.
Okay, bringing up hold on 1 second. 26 points, 6 assists, 4 rebounds is your guess?
That's my guess, but I don't feel confident.
So, of course, the 2009-2010 season. Do you remember the date?
I want to say January 10th.
January 26th.
26th.
January 26th, 2010. Of course, Kentucky was undefeated at that point. It was 19-0. Devin Downey. Here we go. Box score. Devin Downey scored 30.
30?
30 points, 5 boards, 3 assists, 2 steals. There we go.
Well, I'm going to have to update
That was a nice random pull from our reader. I appreciated that. I didn't think you'd know it, but you used to say it all the time that I wondered if it would be muscle memory when you come back to you.
I'm slipping.
Well,
I'll try to be better moving forward. Shouts to Huck and Larnell. Thank you guys once again for watching, listening to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. If you're not subscribed, go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts, including Apple, Spotify. More of us than there are of them. Needs to be reflected in the comments. So please do that, and we will talk to you again. Oh. It might not be Friday morning.
Oh, okay.
It might need to be Thursday night.
Okay, then it might be. Listen, that's fine.
I might have to get on a plane. I've already looked. There's nothing going on Thursday night of importance.
Okay.
And I think I might have to get on a plane Friday morning.
If that is the case, then we will angle for a Thursday night show, which have been the night shows have been well received. So regardless, we hope you enjoyed the pod. We enjoyed the mailbag. We got one more before we get out of this year, and we'll be coming to you live. And the best way to know, how about this?
Yeah.
Subscribe to the YouTube channel.
That's right.
Make sure you ding the bell so when we go live, you will get a mobile notification. You can watch us in real time. If not, it'll be in the feed for you, just as always.
We'll talk to you again. We'll talk to you again at some point. All right. Till then, take care.